This week, I was blessed to relive the experience that helped me understand why we create art and why we need it in our lives. It started when I visited my aunt-in-law, who is an artist. Thanks to her, I had the opportunity to paint with dry pastels and admire art. I felt exhilarated to be surrounded by so much beauty, so much that I understood even deeper why I always needed art. It took me years to understand why, and if you haven't already figured it out, perhaps the realization I'm about to share will bring you more clarity. I craved for art all my life, every day, and if I didn't have it, I suffered quite intensely. And I don't mean just visual art, music or literature, but a kind of art that chooses to show itself through a leaf gently drifting in the breeze, or through the taste of just ripe figs, or the striking vibrancy of pink roses shining in the sun, the Rilke's or Neruda's heart-piercing poems, or Dali's surreal nerve, and Heidegger's phenomenology. They are all the highest form of art for me. For a long time, I couldn't explain why I equivalated these experiences to art, but I did, and I couldn't live without them. I chased the experiences they awakened in me for as long as I can remember. When they weren't present, or they just didn't come in any way, not even through the poems I worshipped the most, I had to create them myself through various means, from really connecting with somebody through an intellectual conversation to actually writing a poem or making a flower bouquet. I had to do something, otherwise I suffered. Now, after longing for art for so long, and after experiencing it so many times and in so many ways, and of course, after knowing who I truly am, I can say that I finally unraveled its mystery. I finally understood where does the need to create art come from, and why do we need it in our lives. I looked closely at my experience to see what actually happens when I experience art, no matter if I create it or admire it. I noticed that whenever I experience art, I immediately recognize it. And how do I know that? Because it leaves me speechless. Art is so powerful that I can only stare in deep admiration. But what is actually happening? Art is so potent that it frees us from what we are not. Our true nature stands out. It shines vibrantly. Who we are is invited to come forth and to stand unhidden from thoughts and feelings. It reveals itself in all its glory, expanding from within until the whole room is pervaded by its radiant silence. Time, space, others, and objects, everything leaves us, and our bare being shines naked in all its splendor. I think most of us can relate to such an experience. For example, when we saw a beautiful painting that we really found delightful, or a beautiful piece of jewelry, a sculpture, a movie, and so on. When we experience them, we can only admire without thinking about anything. All there is present is admiration, accompanied by a feeling of ease and delight. That is nothing else but our true nature, freed, uneclipsed by any other experiences. Of course, not all art gives rise to such feelings. When it's created to seek self-gratification, it's not art. It's an artistic production. It's the case of those artists who are trying or striving even to produce art. Instead of bringing out the sublime in us, it remains at the level of the mind and emphasizes it. True art doesn't come from the mind, but prior to it. It comes to the artist by itself, and it's not the result of a personal endeavor, but an expression of truth, of sublimity. Art is an invitation one needs to be able to hear in order to accept it and allow it to exalt one with its silent bliss. It begins with being aware, noticing freshly like a child. I think by now it's self-evident why we make art, because it invites our true nature to shine clearly, uncovered by any experiences, in a very direct, immediate way. We are simply enraptured by what it brings forth in us. And certainly, we don't create art for its sake. We create it because it's an expression of who we are. Through art, we express who we truly are, and that's why we feel the need to create it. Now, coming back to those so-called ordinary, everyday experiences I mentioned earlier, I noticed that they too have the same astonishing power to bring out our true nature. If we think about it, didn't we experience at least once a beautiful sunset that took our breath away, or a great speech that left us feeling mesmerized, or a delightful meal that took us into a heightened world of tastes, smells, and textures? In all these cases, we experienced our true nature of radiant presence and awareness. That's why I equivalated them with art. What a work of art awakens in us when we create it or admire it is the same as, for example, what the sight of a beautiful sunset awakens. I don't mean to underestimate the value of a work of art, but to point to the same experience they awaken. Even more, this led me to another conclusion. It's not the objects or the work of art that we are delighted by. It's our true nature, the sublime in us. What we really want, it's not the object, it's what it brings forth in us. We want ourselves. We don't always have the same blissful experience when we admire the same work of art or the same beautiful sunset. Sometimes we just don't feel much at all, which means that it's not the object that we enjoy. Otherwise, each time we would see them, we would have the same experience. When I understood this, I was in awe. Suddenly, everything made sense. All the years I surrounded myself with beauty, philosophy, poetry, visual arts, exotic tastes, sights, and other so-called ordinary experiences, I was actually looking for myself. But because I didn't know myself, because I didn't know where to look, I searched outside of me. That's why I wanted them more than anything else, and I suffered when I didn't have them. I wanted my true self. If this resonates with you, I invite you to experiment by yourself and see what happens when you admire or create a work of art, or even something that you find astonishingly beautiful. Then after some time, take a look again. See if you have the same blissful experience. If you don't, then you will know for sure that it's not the object you want, but what it awakens in you. Hope to see you next week. Sending my love.